the best 1000 euro gaming PC in the whole of YouTube. Yes, this is the right video. Welcome back to Routine PSUs, and what we have here today is a PC that will allow you to play at 1080p 240Hz in any competitive game out there, Warzone included, and it will allow you to play any of the more intensive games like Starfield on Ultra. It will also allow you to run stable diffusion and AI, because the GPU we are using has 24GB of VRAM. So I say we go over the specs. Now, of course, little disclaimer, we bought quite a bit of the components as open box or used, and you should do the same if you want to buy a PC in this budget range. However, we also bought a few new components in a very, let's say, in a very smart way, because we cheaped out in some places to save some money that is not going to impact on the performance. So I say we start from the CPU. So the core of this build is going to be the Ryzen 7 7700X from AMD in the new AM5 socket, and it's an 8-core 16-threaded CPU that boosts very high, and for gaming it's exactly the same as the top of the line Ryzen 9 1750X. So it's the best value CPU to get for strictly gaming. Now, first place where we cheaped out a little bit is we've got an A620M Biostar motherboard. Now, this is definitely not an expensive motherboard. It's a micro RTX and it just comes over at over 100 euros. So it's pretty cheap, but it's actually gonna be plenty VRM wise to handle this Ryzen, and it will still support PCIe Gen 5. So I think it's a great value, but the testing will reveal if it was a smart choice or not. Another place like that is this crucial Pro Series DDR5 RAM that we've gotten. Now this again comes in at just 100 euros for a 6000 MHz kit of 30GB of DDR5. So really cheap, and it does the job perfectly fine. However, it does not have RGB, I'm sorry. Then we got this Enermax cooler. Now I know Enermax doesn't have the best name, but those coolers can be gotten. This one was brand new and I've gotten it for really cheap. You can pick one up for 60 bucks and it's still a 360mm only one cooler, and it does the job plenty fine. The bad naming actually doesn't come from this series, it's from the 240 series, the one with the normal block with the circle LED. That's not a good all-in-one. It's the one that we refilled with graphene in this video on the channel, but this one is actually good. Then power supply, we got a Gigabyte 1000 watt power supply. Now this one we bought basically slightly used. However, you're not gonna need a 1000 watt 80 plus gold power supply. If you're gonna recreate this build, you can just get a 750 watts and it's gonna be plenty fine, because the CPU doesn't draw much power at all, and the only part that really draws power is the GPU. And what we have here is an RTX 3090 that we paid just 550 bucks for. It's a Founders Edition, probably the third or fourth Founders Edition you see on the channel. It's because I found a guy who sold them to me for cheap, but they are cheap in general. I recommend you go check out the Market Crash video, because we talk about it in depth, and those RTX 3090s are much better value than like a 4070, and even our 4070 Ti. I actually put one of these in my personal build as well. Case. Now we did not cheap out on the case, but we actually did, because this is the LC Power Gaming 807W Stormwatch X. And now it might remind you of some cases on the market like the NZXT H9 Flow, the Height Y40, and it's very similar. It's an aquarium-like case. However, it comes in at a bit cheaper and it still looks the part. It's not a cheap case, okay? But it's cheaper than the counterparts, so it's a good value for money play. And we will also take a look if it is actually as good as I think it is. So I say we get building, starting from the motherboard, CPU and RAM, and going on with the rest.
Perfect.
Okay, so what's the issue if you buy a brand new older CPU cooler? That they don't give you AM5 compatibility, so they just don't give you the kit, which means we are now finding with my hardware, if I can find the right height to put in the socket, to then put the all-in-one on. Okay, so in our research for the incompatible bracket mounts, we have found these that may work. So how do we test if there is actually good contact? Well, we waste some of our great gelid GC Extreme, we just put it on the socket, right? And now we just slap the cooler on top of it, like this. So it doesn't really fit, as you can see. However, it doesn't really fit, but I am able to make it fit. I was able to make it fit. And as you can see, it's now completely in. Now what we want to know if it has good contact. So how we do it is we just press it down, then we take it off, and we see that the contact is decent, but it's not perfect. Okay, so we have tested and manufactured our own mounting mechanism. We did some trials, so it's now time to take this thing off. Okay, now we can just put a ton of paste because we don't want to risk our CPU being not covered, and it's going to be a tough mounting process. Perfect. And now we can mount it. Okay, so we now have the whole combo finished, and I say it's time to put it in the case. So let's open up the case.
Perfect.
So this case is actually full of stuff inside. It's full of stuff inside. I wonder what's in there. We have a white edition LC power supply. Pretty nice. I say we take a look at this one as well. Well guys, there aren't many white PSUs, but this LC Power LC1000MW is one of the few, so I say we take a look at it. Fully white, sleeved cables. Even the power cord is white. Guys, it's absolutely gorgeous. Let's mount the power supply. Well guys, I don't know about you, but I think it's super clean, so I say we go ahead and turn it on. Take a look at the back as well. It's not properly cable managed, but it's looking nice. Well guys, first boot, let's go. Ooh, it's looking nice, however the LEDs on top are not turned on because I need to plug them better, but I am very impressed so far. Let's see if we get a signal. I think we might not because of the PCIe extension actually. Okay, so it's actually giving us a DRAM error, but it might be very slow because it's a Ryzen 7000, which has plenty of problems. So we will see if we actually get a signal. We'll come back to you if you do. Okay, so we made it work. It was actually a RAM issue. So we put some XPG RAM, and we are now updating the BIOS with this very old mechanism that basically force flashes everything. But thankfully everything is working perfectly fine. It was just a RAM issue, but I will try to make this Crucial Pro work as well with a bit of skill with updates. Okay, so we spent 6 hours troubleshooting this thing, but it's now working perfectly fine. So please subscribe to the channel and drop a like. And we have finally done it. Yes, we managed to fix everything. Now Windows 11 is installed and everything is running properly. We have actually already tuned and installed everything. So let's go over what we did in the end. We had to swap out the RAM. Now, as you know, with DDR5 there is quite a bit of issues with RAM compatibility between Intel and AMD. So we swapped to some very good XPG Lancer DDR5, the ones with the anime girl in the actual box. Yes, we really like that RAM, and it goes all the way up to 6000 MHz, so it's very good RAM. So it wasn't a motherboard issue, and the motherboard from Biostar, this A620, is actually really good. You can definitely save some money if you don't need the extra expandability, because the biggest thing you get by going with a B650 is more USB ports, more connectivity in general, but on a micro ATX board like this one, you are really not losing much. So in my opinion, if you're going with like a Ryzen 5 7600 or a Ryzen 7 7700 or even 7700X like we're doing here today, you can get away easily with this kind of board. Now, another complaint one might have is the VRAMs. So you might say, okay, but aren't the VRAMs a little bit weak for this 8-core 16-threaded X CPU? And truth be told, even at stock, it doesn't really throttle, at least in my testing. So now I will show you the Plan 5 results and the CPU-Z benchmark, and even the Firestrike. And as you can see, everything is just running smoothly and the performance is exactly as expected. Now, Firestrike is really good. It just goes to show how well this Ryzen 7 7700X works with the 3090. So definitely a good pair and I can recommend it. But then again, CPU is running at full capacity, so there's no issue. However, I do recommend to undervolt this Ryzen, and I have a full tutorial on the channel, so go check it out. And actually same thing for the GPU. Now, if you have a Founders Edition in a very well ventilated case, like in this case here, you're not gonna have any noise issues, but having your card run a bit cooler and gain back a few percentages on the 1% lows is always nice, so be sure to undervolt that one as well. Let's now talk about the case and PSU from LC Power. Now, this 807W is one of the best aquarium cases I have tried that are this small. So there aren't many competitors, because this one is much smaller than the height Y60 I have in my personal build and then the height Y40 that I have covered on the channel. We have had quite a bit of an aquarium cases. I think I have tried pretty much them all, so I consider myself an aquarium expert. You know, I can go ahead and like place goldfishes into aquariums easily. So this one gets a pass from me. It's nice, it's easy to build in, and it's more compact than the other ones, while still managing to fit up to theoretically 360mm all-in-one coolers. So it's very impressive. You can also populate the bottom with RGB fans. So all in all, I'm really happy. Something I liked even more than this case that I didn't mention in the intro because it was hidden inside the box of the case is the power supply. Now, there aren't many full white PSUs that come with white sleeved cables out of the box at all. I think it's the only one on the market actually, this LC Power LC1000MW, and I was extremely impressed by the quality of the PSU. It's a 1000 watt unit with very good capacitors, with an 80+ gold certification that's very easy to build in. It comes with a ton of cables. So those two components probably are my favorite parts in the whole build, together with the motherboard. Massive pass, very good, 10 out of 10 in my score. I am actually considering the possibility of buying more of these PSUs to avoid using extensions. They just look absolutely stunning. They even have the little cable to do the cable management in white, so definitely a pass. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Well, enough with the hardware. We have now gone over pretty much everything, the SSD and the cooler. There's really not much to say. Well, aside from that difficulty, I had to mount the cooler because they don't make AM5 kits out of the box, so it was really difficult to make it fit. But with that aside, we had absolutely no issues. So let's talk about what you have all been waiting for: performance and gaming benchmark. Now, I have talked a bit about the CPU. Again, we have put the benchmarks in CPU-Z already, but again, let's comment on it a bit. Close to 800 points in single thread. That's massive. It's a massive score. It's on par with the i9 3900K pretty much, so it's massive. Speaking of which, let's finally talk about gaming. So if you are playing at 1080p and you have this build, it's not actually a bad idea if you want to play high refresh rate. So if you have like a 144Hz monitor, it's wasted, but if you have like a 240 or a 360Hz monitor, then it's actually kind of good. So for example, in the new CSGO, this thing will do all the FPS you want. Okay, however, if you're playing more heavy games, like for example Apex Legends, you are gonna be getting very close to maxing out the game engine at 240 Hz, just locked in, because remember, Apex has a maximum of 300, so you cannot really play at 360. Now, Warzone is heavy with the latest patches, especially now in this period we are around the Halloween update, and so with the Halloween update we can still manage to get close to the 240 FPS mark. But again, with competitive settings, obviously. Fortnite is not an issue at all. Even there with the Halloween event, it's no issue at all. We are able to push over 300 frames, even with a bit higher details. And you can actually stream on this PC. That's something I don't speak about very often on the channel, but those high-end PCs also allow you to stream very nicely, because you can use the encoder on the GPU. You basically use the RT encoder on the graphic card, so you don't actually subtract energy from the game, if it makes sense, because the RT is not used unless you have ray tracing, and stream very nicely, so it's actually kind of nice. But all in all, it's a PC that will do anything: CAD, 3D modeling, editing, and it comes in at very cheap. I don't think I have gotten a PC this cheap for just around the 1000 euros mark. Now, obviously, if you want to get on the 1000 euros mark for yourself, you will have to do a little bit of tricks with like compromising here and there on the aesthetic. You probably will not be able to get a 1000 watt PSU like I have, and you will have to get a smaller SSD, cheaper RAM, etc. But you can do it. A PC like this, if you build it like without finding insane deals and you want this aesthetic, you're probably looking at right around the $1,500 mark to get all the aesthetic and everything, to be completely fair. But subscribe to the channel and let me know down below. Did you like the video? Would you have changed anything? And see you in the next one, guys. Bye.